Paranormalies podcast would like to thank Twinkle Twinkle Little Store, located in Cheyenne, Wyoming, for sponsoring our show. Hey, good evening, Aaron.
How are you?
Good. How are you doing, man?
Good. I'm doing all right. It's much colder out there than it has been, and I'm not happy about that again.
Yeah, same here. It's almost to the negatives already. I'm not ready for it, dude.
Yeah, it is unbearable sometimes.
Yeah, it's the season of indoor investigations only for next 6 months.
Right? At least in Wyoming
Yes, for sure.
or anywhere along that longitude. So we were supposed to have 222 Paranormal podcast on. Something has happened and they are not here. Hopefully we can get them back on and chat with them.
Yeah, absolutely.
We will just kind of chat a little bit about what we have been doing and where you're going to be able to see that and some of the methods we use maybe.
Works for me. So yeah, it's been an interesting year. My first year with the team, and I think we all kind of hit the ground running with me joining, and been having a lot of fun. So it's been very little integration into the team. That's one thing I liked, is we all just kind of naturally get along. So it makes it a heck of a lot easier.
Yeah, meshed right in. We were very happy to bring you on board. And, with all the YouTube stuff that people can see and the first episode on Paraflix, I think they're happy you're on board too, being able to help us out and get some of that out there.
Yeah, it's been a blast. So I've really been enjoying it. And yeah, speaking of Paraflix, we're coming up on our second episode to get released. I'm excited for that.
Should have that finished edited in the next couple days, you said, and then we'll get that over to them and have it up in hopefully a couple weeks.
Yeah, just a couple tweaks to do, and I think we'll be ready to go. So
nice. I had someone text me today who was like, "Hey, I watched the stuff on YouTube that you did at Terry Bison." And I was like, "Right on. Glad people are still seeing that."
That was a fun investigation.
Yeah, that was definitely pretty interesting out there, getting the warden stuff and some of that other stuff we got in the house.
Yep. Yeah, that the Roosevelt house they have, that was really interesting. I remember doing the solo session upstairs, just sitting in by myself. I had the Ovilus out. Next thing I know, I hear, footsteps and knocking on the wall in the room next to me. And, the closest people were, you and our escort that were, downstairs, the rep from Terry Bison, doing some stuff down there. And yeah, that was pretty cool.
Yeah. I'm trying to think. There was something out there that caught my attention. I just can't remember what it was, but at the time it was a cool investigation. It was kind of a last minute get in there and do some stuff with them. Hopefully we can get back out there and do a little more and get that out there.
Yep. Yeah, that'd be nice. I'd like to spend some more time in that house. So, and then that
Definitely
barn
a cool
too.
House.
We got a bunch of stuff in the barn, but it was so cold it was hard to stay in there for any length of time. And that seems to be the theme this year, is either extreme heat or extreme cold. So
yeah, that was our last place that we went when we were there, and I was done. I'm like, I am too cold.
Yep.
Let's go. And then extreme heat. People are going to see in that second episode that we're putting out. We went to Kansas and we learned about a atmospheric thing called corn sweat.
Corn sweat, yes.
Where
never heard of that in my life.
Where the corn is sweating out water, and it can feel like I don't even remember the number, but I'm going to say it was more than 500 easy Olympic swimming pools in a day. And it was just, I was amazed. And yeah, it made it pretty warm in Kansas, even in the middle of the night.
Very, yes. I think it was probably a good 105 in that house in the middle of the night, if not a little more.
Yeah, even in the basement, when you're doing your solo, people are going to see just how hot it was, even in the little crawl space of the basement.
Yeah, the dirt basement, barely tall enough to walk through. I figured it'd be nice and cool down there, and then I get down there, and half the video I'm complaining about how hot it is. So,
when when we take those breaks, that big huge fan, that thing had to be 4 foot across.
yep,
Like that was the first thing that would get turned on when we were taking breaks.
yep.
Turn the fan on and get some air moving.
And then good luck hearing anything in the house that's going on when that thing was going. So,
Yeah, wasn't going to be anything going on that we heard anyway.
yep.
But get some air moving and then turn it off and continue to investigate.
Yeah, and I think we had the REMs go off a couple times when we were downstairs that we didn't know about because of the fan until we went back and watched the statics.
Right. Yep.
Yeah, in that one particular room that, we can talk about after the episode's released because don't want to give it
Right.
away. But yeah,
Nope.
yep, no
Um,
clue it was going off at all.
yeah. Yep. Um, I do want to throw out there that we are going to have Natalie Jones on the podcast January 1st, who is the CEO of and founder of Paraflix, which is going to be pretty cool because she'll be able to tell us about, how our episodes are doing on there and what she thinks of them too. I think that's pretty exciting.
Yeah, I can't wait to get her on. She's been a fun person to talk to. The couple times I've, had conversation with her, and yeah, really nice person. So,
Yep.
hey,
I
good
think
evening,
this
Tina.
coming,
Thanks for joining.
hey, good evening. Um, I think this coming year, we're going to try to get out to some cons as well. Um, our problem is we are in Wyoming and everything is
Out
down in
east.
Texas or out east, and it's a minimum of like a 19-hour drive. But you might see it. Some people might see us at some of those this year, a couple of them. I like to try to get to a couple,
Yeah, agreed.
drive time between two or three of us and get out there.
Yeah,
Um,
I've gone to a couple of horror cons in the past, and they can be a lot of fun. So I'm hoping we can, get out, set out a booth, and maybe do some investigations while we're out there, and just meet other people from the community. I think that'll be great.
yeah. Yep. Or those fans that are out there that are fans of Paraflix and get to scroll by us and watch our stuff and get to meet some people around the country even.
Yeah, yeah, that'll be great.
Got it. Debbie's saying we got to come to the Octagon. I think that's like 24-hour drive. That's 2 days for us, but I would love to get down in that area and maybe do the Octagon and then the, oh gosh, what's the asylum that's close?
Yeah, I don't remember the name
Um,
of it, but yeah, that's a long
Gosh,
drive.
it's in Radford. I know that, but I can't remember what it is. So, but yeah, that can always be something that we look forward to going out to. You're practically on the coast. I mean, so St. Albans
St.
Sanatorium.
Albans,
That's what
that's
it
it. Yep.
is. Yeah,
Thanks, Debbie. Yeah. Yeah, and
it's
I think something like that, we do a long trip, get everyone out and do 4 or 5 days and, investigate 2 or 3 places and, really make it worth it getting out there and seeing, everything that an area has to offer.
right, and be able to try out our double Estes that we have started to incorporate into every investigation at some of these bigger and well-known places and see what happens
Yeah.
there.
Yeah, I tell you that double Estes has it's really surprised me the results we've been getting. I think our first really good one was with when we were at the Museum of the West, down in the vault, with me and Gina doing the double Estes.
Yeah, when you're sitting there talking about seeing the waterfall and everything, and she's confirming it,
Yep. I
that
see.
was
Yep.
really cool.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that was amazing.
the investigation we had this last weekend, which will end up being, I believe, like episode 4, which we hope to get these out a little sooner. October kind of played a little heck with us because we're doing some local stuff, and it's always spooky season, and we're doing stuff. So being new to this filming stuff, we we have learned that we can't do anything and expect to get it out around October or just after.
Yeah.
So we did investigate somewhere this last Saturday. Like I said, that should be like episode 4. And the girls did it. Jackie and Gina did it. Double Estes. It went over so well. They continued, like we had to stop them because they just been under for so long. That you and I then went under double Estes and continued. And
Yep.
I'm pretty sure the person I was talking to was like hitting on the girls.
Yep.
So might have to watch out and make sure they're not trying to snatch Gina from me.
I know, right? Trying to slide in on it. Yeah. Yeah,
At
that
least
was
they can't.
interesting. The stuff we had going on around the room too. During the double Estes, we had some equipment going off. You saw that shadow behind me.
Yeah, you sent me that picture, and I can't wait to get into video and see if we catch anything there. I
Yeah.
do want to throw out that if Gina and Jackie are watching and they want to come on in, I did send those links, and you could drop in and chat for a little bit if you want.
Oh, they'll
Debbie
be
says they're
doing
going.
Dinner with a Ghost on the 6th. You've told me about Dinner with a Ghost, Aaron.
Yeah, it's that's where I met Debbie and John. Was actually up in Deadwood, um, doing that, and then they invited us over to Mitchell to do it with them, and then I went out to Gettysburg and did it with them and helped, and that was my big Gettysburg experience. Spending some time out on the battlefields in the middle of the night.
I
It's
can't wait for
amazing.
that this summer. Yeah.
Yeah, we're gonna take a personal vacation, and we invited the team that if they would like to come, they can. And Jason and his wife took us up on it. I think Jackie and Jeremiah are going to come out, and we might squeeze in an investigation while we're there. But really, it's just kind of a vacation to get away and take a break, and obviously spend it with good friends.
Yep. Yeah, that'll be good. Just kind of get out of get to a different side of the country. I haven't been out east in probably 15 years, so it'll be nice to get out there and see stuff again.
If I remember hearing, didn't you say you spent some time growing up in Vermont?
Yep. Yeah, I was born
Yeah,
in Vermont, so then I lived in New York and, then kind of across the US from there. So, and then
nice.
I was in North Carolina in the Army, which North Carolina has so many hidden gems for investigating out there. Me and my friend, we were big into geocaching, which is,
Hmm.
you use a GPS and you find these caches that people hide right out in the woods and stuff. So we'd spend all our off time, practice ruck marching. So we'd, load up our rucks and, 50, 60 pounds and go geocaching, find 4 or 5 of them, over 10 miles through the woods. And, we'd come across these buildings that, weren't even on the map anymore, old power stations and, old hospitals and stuff like that, you just go and explore. We got really big into the urban exploration side of it. And then, that's what kind of got me back into, investigating again was, finding those places. And then, weird stuff happens when you go into some of them. And, because I'd done it off and on ever since I was a kid. I've always been interested in it. But yeah, North Carolina was just so cool. All the history out there.
I mean, when you look at it, our country is a young country,
Yep.
and when you look at even the East Coast compared to the West Coast, or even our area, out here in the West, like we're younger than over there on the coast, and there's so much stuff that's been over there. Of course, Civil War happened over there. Um, it's crazy the amount of energy that you'll find in some of those places.
Yeah.
And then you just stumble upon a building that's been abandoned for how long, you know?
Yep. And that's what we used to do. And then we spent a lot of time looking for I don't know if it's an urban legend or if it's confirmed. It's been so long ago, but they had there was this, we always heard about these the Civil War like evacuation tunnels in Wilmington and a few other towns in North Carolina that are right there on the ocean. We spent a lot of time trying to find those because we had heard, they've gotten bricked up, but there was always the urban legend of, like these archaeologists from the university that were, looking for him and, punched into a tunnel and found this cache of old, muskets and stuff sitting there that were, not well preserved, but, good enough shape to tell what they are. So yeah, we spent a lot of time looking for those, but never found them.
That'd be freaking cool to come across. Hey,
Yes.
we have Gina coming on.
Hey,
Hi,
Gina.
guys.
Hey. So, sent you a link. Glad you came in. We'll get you in with some guests as we continue to grow. And right now, we're just kind of chatting about some of our stuff. I'm sure you've listened.
Fantastic.
Yeah, so we were
So,
talking about the double Estes, Gina, and
Oh, boy. Lots of good stories from that.
yeah. So yeah, the first time we did it, as far as with me, with as part of the team, was when you and I did it in the vault of the Museum of the West, and we were talking
Yes.
about how I'm not a I don't get like visions or pictures usually, but yeah, while we were doing that, I just had this picture come into my head clear as day of that waterfall, with the cliffs on each side, with
Yes.
the tree on each side of the waterfall. It's still
And
plain
how
as day in my
crazy.
head.
Yeah, and how crazy that at that time I was hearing what was it? He sees it, he sees.
He sees, yep. And
Yeah.
you said it over and over. I think he said it 4 or 5 times. And it seemed the timing of it too seemed to kind of enunciate every time I would talk about, what I was seeing with that, that picture I was shown. You would say he sees again, like they were, making sure we knew that they were showing us that. It was just so cool.
Yeah, it was very cool. Hi, Debbie. Hi, Tina. Good to see you guys on here. That Estes session too, if you recall, was my first ever Estes session. Kind of neat that we were able to document that for Paraflix.
Yeah, that was really cool. So, people that don't know, Gina is the main sensitive on our team, sensitive person, very, very intuitive. Um, so what do you think about the double Estes or even just the Estes in general that makes it so productive for certain types of people?
Oh, well, for me, I feel like the fact that I have no interruptions, I'm cut off from any other sounds, I'm cut off from any other visuals. It's just me and the spirit box. It's almost like a connection with the spirit box. And to be honest, it's hard for me to hear anything off the spirit box normally. But when we are under an Estes session with those pieces taken away, the sight and whatnot, man, it comes through so clear for me. I'm feeling like uh, sometimes I get the feelings of whatever is coming through as well, not just the sounds.
Oh, interesting. Okay. I've noticed one thing when I do the spirit box and it's a really productive session, I will be absolutely smoked the next day.
Oh,
I'm not much of a sleep in type of person, sleeping in for me is usually like 8 o'clock. Um,
mhm.
but I remember after, that double Estes session we got done, I think I slept till 1 or 2 in the afternoon that next day.
Mm.
And that's not, the only time that's happened. It can be very draining.
For sure, it can. Definitely draining. Um, it seems for a while afterwards, for me, I'm drained is a good way to describe it. I'm also, I don't know, like almost in a different zone. I'm just not on the same. I don't know that it's hard for me to describe, but I go under as in one way, and I come out just like in a different zone.
Yep. Yeah, I hear you there. I feel the same way with that. And I think one of my favorite things with doing an Estes is, you're sitting there, and especially since we've done the blindfold as well, so
Mm.
there's no cheating. Um,
Right? Yeah.
but yeah, we all got these really nice plush sleep masks now, and they're, oh god, they're great. But you're sitting there and you're saying whatever, you're hearing or whatever comes into your mind's eye, right? And
Right.
the whole time it's like, man, this is gibberish. This session isn't going to be anything. I'm like, when I was talking about that picture, I was like, this is just, kind of get that self-consciousness a little bit. It's like, oh, this is so dumb. Like
Yes.
I'm describing a waterfall to, people that are, doing a ghost
Yeah.
hunt, right? Like this isn't going to make sense. And then,
Right.
you take off those earphones or the headphones and everyone's just like staring at you like, holy
Whoa.
crap, dude. It's like, I
You
always
have
think
no
that's so
idea
cool.
what
Yep.
we all just heard.
Yep.
Yeah,
Right.
Exactly.
Yeah. And then it's
sometimes
like everyone wants to say what just happened, and everyone's just, oh, blah, blah, da, 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 da,
Yep.
da, 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 and it was pretty neat. Not only did we have those, you two doing that, but we had the PS device that was also confirming at the same time.
Oh, I
Yeah.
forgot about that
We had
part.
the Estes and that coming through. So it was super crazy in that vault.
Yeah. And that was the Polter script we were using, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I like that thing. It seems to it seems to take a little more to get it, going, but I don't know. I feel like it's less prone to false positives. That's just kind of my gut with it so far.
I don't know. I think Dave Trader yelling surprise on the obelisk is pretty
Oh God,
cool
that's
though.
wonderful, isn't it?
Surprise.
Yeah. Yeah, you're just expecting these flat, like robotic monotone words to come out, and then all of a sudden he screams surprise at you when you're sitting in a dark room.
Yeah. The episode that's going to be dropping, we had Gina and Jackie doing the Estes in a closet, a closet, a room, a closet.
It was almost like a children's play area / closet.
Yeah. And that was 2 short weeks after I had injured my back. And I'm sitting there with Jason while he's filming, and I'm like, I think we have this in the film and everyone's going to see it, where I was like, my back is killing me. And Jackie comes off through the Estes with Crybaby.
Yep.
And so that's pretty crazy. I mean, we're used to asking questions, getting a response, but just chit chat back and forth between Jason and I, and we get something like that. I was like, but I'm injured.
My back's broken.
So yeah, that was pretty crazy too. The one from this past weekend,
Yeah.
we're going to end up having a counter, a pretty counter, when we do that one, because it had said that word so many times.
Yep.
It's pretty neat how you can get responses to questions when they can't hear you.
Yeah.
What's even more neat is that communication back and forth between the spirits.
Yep.
Sometimes it seems like the spirits get excited and almost line up to start talking too. I know Jason and I both experienced that in one of our doubles, where it was, I think you said, Jason, it was like a Ferris wheel or a merry-go-round
Like
of
a
spirits,
carousel.
wanting to come through, because you would get one voice and then seconds later a whole nother voice, and it was almost like you couldn't keep up.
Yep. Yeah, and that raises the question too of, does Estes or, these other methods, not necessarily like I hate, saying like gateway or portal, right? Because that has such like negative connotation behind it. But does that kind of, are you hanging a shingle, right? And saying, hey, I'm speaking with whoever's out there. So do you have more than just the spirits that reside in that house or building, start kind of congregating and coming through?
Well, and that's what I believe. Where we were for that one, we're downtown Cheyenne. Cheyenne's 150 years old. The city was dubbed Hell on Wheels when the railroad started coming in. It was a tent city, for the longest time down there until buildings started to be built. So the amount of people that were just in that area downtown 150 years ago, 100 years ago, and all the activities. At one point, Cheyenne had more bars than churches. Our buildings are from the 1890s. I mean, that's not real old when you look at like the coast. You were just out in Boston and saw graves from 1600.
Yep.
So like I said earlier, we're young out here still, but how many people were in that downtown area at that time, 100 to 150 years ago?
Yep.
And then during that time, it was a rough time. How many people did get rolled, or how many people got killed in that area, or,
Yep. That'll never be
for their
documented.
money, or non-documented. Exactly.
Yep.
We can only go back in the papers for so far and see what happened. But I really think that's a lot of what we were getting with that whole carousel that you mentioned, where someone's getting on and someone's getting off and someone's getting on and someone's getting off. Because you said even under SSU had come in and you said it sounds like so many different voices.
Yep.
But when you're dealing with an area like that, that's what I think it is.
Yep, I agree. I think it's just like you said, a congestion of energy or spirits, in an area. And, if they're sentient, they're going to want to be heard, or at least a good portion of them, I think, will want to be heard. So, it makes sense to line up, or, however they do it, and start shouting stuff out.
Definitely. And that's something, when we start traveling and we start going back east and we hit even some of those places, like when we're talking to the owner of the Boyd House,
Right.
and when we start hitting places that are over in that area, it's going to be that same thing. Or, if we do an investigation while we're in Gettysburg, our town, Cheyenne, has just over 50,000 people in it. The town of Cheyenne died at Gettysburg. 50,000 people died at Gettysburg.
Yep.
Holy cow.
Yeah. It's hard to fathom that, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah. I think Debbie just said it pretty well. The untold stories, before the paper,
Indeed. Yeah.
before any documentation, you don't know those stories.
Yep.
And that's what we're pulling out too. We are pulling out those stories, and we are trying to do some of that research, but you can only go so far.
Yep.
I think it's going to be pretty cool when we do get that one out, the third episode out, the research that they do see that we found, and how we do go back and find these things, like at the Nelson Museum of the West. We were able to go back and see that there was a millinery there, that there was National Furs and Fashions in the 40s.
Yep.
And then we go back to those wood buildings of the 1800s with the millinery and with the oil company and the land company.
Yep.
And we're able to pull those into the episode. And
Yeah,
now it's a modern building, but at one time that was two separate buildings that hosted those things, plus, livable quarters upstairs.
Yep. And, just kind of showing how hard it is even to research a place that's only got, 150, 200 years of history. For the Museum of the West, you found one map and a couple newspaper ads, right? Advertising the business at certain times. And that's really all we had to work off. Even when I was putting the video together, just trying to find a logo for National Furs and Fashion was almost impossible. I ended up, I found a tag that someone had taken a picture of, one of the, the tags on the fur coats. But that's about all I could find on it. It's
and that came
really
in
hard.
the 50s, and look how hard it was to find.
Right.
You're muted, Gina. But yeah, even in the 50s, it can show you how hard it is to find something. The coolest thing is in that one in episode 3, which I don't want to give away details. I don't want to give away places. So we're just calling them episodes.
Yep.
But we know what episode 3 is, and we're able to find the exact business that is mentioned during an Estes session. Or not, it wasn't an Estes session. It was just during a Spirit Box session.
Yep.
And it's cool. And now we're trying to go through census records to find that family and some of their history.
Yep. And I think episode 3 is, it's going to be really interesting because there's never been an investigation done in that building before.
Well, and that's what I like. We are getting into some of these buildings in Cheyenne that other teams have not been into. And there's other teams here and we're happy that they've been in some of these other places that we've been into, and maybe get some of that feedback at some point. But yeah, we're in these buildings that no one's ever been in.
Yep. Just like, we were sitting in that one room, we had that, that very specific piece of equipment, that was just going nuts. And it seemed like, it took a little bit of time for him to, figure out how to use it. And then after that, we couldn't get him to stop. And
Yeah.
then that's when we decided to fire up the spirit box, and we got that very specific answer, which was, almost like the holy grail of, investigating, right? Something, corroborating evidence, that you can put together. And
Right. Going with that, we've talked about it before, how we bond to our equipment. Like the spirit box is definitely my thing. Like I like doing the spirit box sessions and picking those words out and knowing what they are. I feel I've bonded to my SB7. And other investigators across the country have mentioned the same thing, bonding to their recorders or whatever.
Yep.
And it was almost the same for that, where that entity bonded to that piece of equipment, because we did try some other things and didn't get anything. And then we put this back out, and that's what they wanted to use.
Yep.
And I think that's part of this whole thing too. We don't know, we go in and we're teaching them how to use equipment. And I think they like that when they can find that piece that they can communicate with.
Yep. Agreed. So I know I've bonded. I think the same thing. I love the SB7. For the longest time, I had trouble using it because, kind of like what Gina said, it can be, kind of overwhelming hearing, taking all that audio in and trying to. But I think once I, kind of adjusted and got used to using it, yeah, the SB7 is one of my favorites. And then I've really grown fond of the Yes No Prism that we've been putting. That thing is so cool.
Yeah, that's pretty neat piece, and being able to see that red green for a yes no, and not just and I know there's a couple different ones out there where it's like two different devices, one's a yes, one's a no.
Yep.
But just being able, normally you hear them, with like a rim you hear it, but seeing that light up, and it lights up the whole room, and you know what that answer was.
Yep. I like using that during a spirit box because, like you said, you don't have to just hear it, kind of like a REM. You get that visual feedback a little more too with the red and green, that it's easier to, pick out if you're getting responses with other stuff going on.
I kind of dig playing with the SLS camera too. I really like to see, so we get those audio responses from those spirit boxes, and the SLS, we can get a visual response. Even sometimes they respond to, for lack of better words, commands. So like Jason had a time at the nights where we said, give them a high five, and right there on the spirit or on the SLS gave him a high five.
Oh, that's right. Where it crawled across the ceiling.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, I said, give me a high five. And then it went up. You're muted, Aaron. I saw you high five in the air.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was above you, and he just like raised your hand and it high fived you.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
cool.
that was so cool. It's like, all right, let's take the creepy out of this a little bit. You already crawled across the ceiling like a horror movie.
Right.
Let's be friendly.
Yeah.
Yeah. People watching, if you have questions about like some of the places we've been, we'll talk about some of the other places we've been, any of the equipment we use. That's what we're doing tonight. We'll answer those. We did the old building downtown that was a brothel with the spirit box, the SB7, and had that great capture that's on the YouTube channel where it says, you ask a lot of questions. That's what we do. As investigators, we ask a lot of questions. Unfortunately, I'm pretty sure that was a madam who didn't like all the questions being asked. So that one was pretty neat though.
Yeah, that was. And that's one thing I'm going to work on over this winter. I've got a couple projects, and One of them is a remote EVP, you know, device that can ask questions when you're not there. And yeah, so that should be fun. I'm hoping to have that done by next summer. So
That will be a great one to leave at the nights in the middle of the night.
yeah, I tell you, that place, you know, we've got all the security cameras, you know, you can be sure no one comes up. And I've done it probably 20 or 30 times now, and I maybe once or twice it's disappointed. You know, but I've let recorders run overnight and grab them, and you play them back, and you hear footsteps and things slamming around, and you know, you go check the security cameras and nothing. So I love
You,
doing that and just
you
seeing.
actually sent me a couple one of the last times you did that upstairs with the big booms and the
Yeah,
footsteps. And you know, when you said to figure it out when it was probably about 3:30 in the morning.
yep,
There's no one going up there then.
no,
And those were loud.
yeah. Yep. It seems to like to, I don't know, to me it almost sounds like a temper tantrum sometimes, you know, stomping and then stuff being thrown around. But it's so weird because, you know, you'll hear chairs dragging across the floor and all that, but you go up there and nothing has changed. You know, we've even, you know, tried taking a bunch of pictures, right, to, you know, compare to when we went up and picked up the recorders, and everything is the exact same, but you can hear stuff being like dropped on the floor because you can hear it bounce, right, hitting that old wood floor, you know, and it bounces and then settles. You hear it plain as day, but then there's nothing on the floor. It's like, okay, they pick cleaning up after themselves, or is this more of a, you know, a residual type thing or what? You know, it's really interesting.
Yeah. Pretty neat. Real quick, Gina, why don't you tell us a little bit about Twinkle Twinkle? You know, they've been sponsoring us for the podcast. I know you go down there. We've gone down there. They have some pretty neat stuff in there.
They do. I actually just took it off, but I'm wearing this really awesome evil eye bracelet that I think is absolutely beautiful. Some of the jewelry you can find down there, stunning, really. If you like crystals or any kind of jewelry, she's got it. And she has the crystals and things too that you can make your own jewelry if you would like. I find that stuff pretty intriguing. But I've been wearing my evil. I say I've been wearing it all the time, and of course, I just took it off because under my hoodie, I'm wearing my jammies, guys. But I wear my evil eye bracelet everywhere I go since I've gotten it. She has a beautiful store and lots of really neat things.
It sounds like they got stuff maybe to pick up for winter projects, you know, when we're snowed in, and make some jewelry and stuff, Gina.
For sure, yeah.
While you brew some of that Bones coffee that I
Yes.
Oh my
always
God.
talk about.
Gotta love that. But she also has some Goshen coffee that is very delicious.
Oh, I'll have to try that. So imagine that's made just a little north of us, probably, huh?
Well,
Actually, it's Louisiana. When they
yes.
went down
Oh,
to
okay.
New Orleans, they went to visit her nephew, and it's a coffee company he works for, and so they started bringing it in. So it's out of Louisiana.
Gotcha. Okay, I assume Goshen because of Goshen County, just north of us.
That's
Right.
what I
Yeah.
do when I saw it.
They also have all the like 2 whole racks, like 6 foot long, of tarot cards. So if you're into that, you can go down there and find all different types of tarot cards. You know, and Tim and Patricia are good people. We love going in, just talking to them.
Yeah, I know. I always used to go into their Ridge Road store and go look at all the books because she had just such like a random selection of good books. There's always one or two that I could, you know, pick up that I knew I wasn't going to get, you know, going to Barnes and Noble or something like that. So I always enjoyed that.
Right. And that building's really cool. That building's been around since about 1890. It was a bar. It was a brothel. It's pretty neat. We've done some of our Twilight Tale nights there, where people could come in and tell their ghost stories. That's something we offer out to the public. It's usually free. Our first one we did charge, but we had Jill Pope there, and Jill read. We did that one at the Nights, and Jill read her chapter about the Nights out of Haunted Cheyenne book. But at the Tivoli, where Twinkle Twinkle is, we did host those for free, and It's where people can come, and we'll have more of those where people can come in and tell their ghost stories. You know, that I think a lot of people don't want to put it out there because people think they're weird, and we
Yep.
are weird, and we like to hear them.
Love it.
So we'll have more of those coming next year, and I don't know if they'll be down there, but we'll find somewhere to host them if we can't host them there.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, those are always fun. I really like doing our, the public events. Of course, I love the public investigations, getting people in that, have been curious about it, but, maybe haven't had the chance to actually, perform an investigation and, let them give them some equipment and, let them start asking questions and, see the look on their face when they start, getting reactions and responses is always so cool.
For sure. Debbie said, would you like to do a different location in Deadwood? Try a trap camera to set up when you're put equipment in a room that you don't stay in. I'd love to go back up there and just put stuff down in Seth's cellar in the Bullock again. We know that there was a lot of activity down there.
Yeah, I've never had the opportunity to investigate in Deadwood. I go up there for a cybersecurity conference. I try to go every year. And stayed in some really cool, the old hotels up there and stuff. And yeah, I've always wanted to get up there and do something.
The Black Hills Paranormal team does the Adams House, which is a museum. They do that every October. I think they host public there. Maybe that's somewhere we can look at in the future is the Adams House.
Yeah, that'd be good. I usually go up there, and depends on when they do it. It's usually September or October that conference happens. So I'm always looking for stuff to do at night.
Yeah, we are taking off December and January so we can work on some stuff, and then into January we'll start sending out emails for places, and I already have a list, so we can expect to hopefully get into some of those and put out some good stuff for season 2 next year.
Ooh,
Yeah.
I have an idea.
What you got?
Maybe each of us in the group comes up with a couple of places we'd like to go that are realistic and put those places in a hat. Like you've seen those vacation things that people do where they going on vacation, they pull it out of a hat.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll. Yeah,
there you go.
I think that's a good idea.
For sure.
So no overseas places, though, right? Said you got to stay realistic. If not, Aaron's going to have us out in Ireland.
Get your
Which I
passports
wouldn't
updated.
complain about at all.
Make sure your passport's up to date.
Yep.
Like she just said, yeah. I'll be right over there. Lep Castle.
Someday we're going to do overseas. Probably not anytime soon, but someday.
Absolutely. Yep. And I don't know how much spirit activity is really there. But I want to go to Castle Dracula, the old Vlad the Impaler castle. I mean, with all those, what was it, tens of thousands of people impaled on the battlefield there, it's almost like, kind of comparable to Gettysburg, right? There's got to be, some sort of spirit activity because of all that. But, I've always just been, I've always loved the history of that area out there.
I don't know a ton about like overseas history, but yeah, it would definitely be cool. I mean, we're just doing what we're doing, right? And we can do what we do anywhere. So that could be a good time.
Yeah, absolutely. Maybe in the next couple of years we'll go do our overseas tour and do a whole. I mean, if we're gonna do it, we might as well dedicate a whole season to it, right?
Oh my gosh, yes.
So we have asked most of our guests what their bucket list place is. So let's do that here. Gina, what's your bucket list place?
Oh, well, I've said a few times, I think it would be really neat to check out the suicide forest in Japan. Obviously the amount of death there is insane, but the fact that some of the people that have died there have chosen to die there, I'm sure others have been murdered. I'm sure there is a multitude of spiritual, I don't know what the word is, maybe spiritual issues. And I would love to give a voice to them.
Well, and with the Japanese, mythology or spiritualism, if you're not, reincarnation, right? But they have a lot of mythology on spirits that are stuck, and the more
Yes.
the tormented type that can't move on due to one reason or
Yes.
another.
Very sad.
Yep.
Yep. Okay. So Jason, your
I
bucket list
think
place?
right, it always changes. Yeah, but I don't know. The past couple of years, I've been stuck on Velisca for some reason. That is like,
Mm,
when someone's like, "Where do you want to investigate?" Velisca. Um, yeah, I don't know. I just for some reason I feel like I need to, get out there and check that place out. So it'll probably change next time you talk to me, but right now it's
see,
Velisca.
but that's a realistic place. Like
It is, yeah.
we can drive there, and it's not that far, and that's somewhere we can go and do a weekend.
Yep.
So yeah, yeah, that's it.
Maybe
And
mentally that's what I'm
man,
doing is just trying to, have a safe choice, right?
Velisca has been over the last few years, from what I understand, it's been really a bit different than it ever was. Like it's if you're going in and you want some crazy messed up energy and you're putting that out, then that's what you're going to get. But if you go in and you're giving off this good stuff, then that's what you're getting back too. You're getting more like the kids. But if you're going in super crazy, then you're getting maybe the murder and getting crazy stuff.
Yep. Well, and that's
So
what was it, a couple of years ago? I don't know. Time seems to just go by. I'm actually looking it up, and it was actually 10 years ago. So yeah, I am way off. But that's where a paranormal investigator had stabbed himself during an investigation.
yeah, yeah,
I could swear
and
that
that's what
was
I'm
only a
saying.
few years ago.
And I think that's when it kind of started. Like he went in with this, okay, if you think you can do, and that's what happened.
Yep.
So
Yeah, that's one thing, I think that place we went to in Kansas, had the potential. I don't know, something is off with that place, not necessarily in a bad way, but um I feel that was one of those places kind of where you get what you put into it, right? And you definitely want to stay humble and respectful.
yep. And that's what we do everywhere we go.
Yep.
We're definitely respectful. We don't go in antagonizing. We don't go in conjuring stuff. We're not going to go in and try to open anything. It's just not what we do. It's not
Yeah.
what we started out saying we wouldn't do that, and we've stuck to that.
Yeah, well, I always kind of look at it, and everyone's got their own opinions, but I always kind of look at it like if someone came up to me and was just, start yelling and screaming for me to talk to them, am I going to want to talk to them or am I going to want to, just be like, yeah, up yours, dude, and, turn around and leave, right? And, if you're speaking to, an intelligent, spirit or entity, they're going to have feelings, right? I doubt it's it's a numb, monotone place, so.
Yep.
I big big believer in treat people, in the spirits how you'd want to be treated.
Yes. I think I'm going to call it a night. We've had a great discussion tonight. We had our bucket list places. I love talking about the double Estes that we do.
Yeah.
That's something that we are definitely incorporating into every investigation we do. Be it a something we're filming or something where we're just going out, just doing a good old investigation where we leave the
Yep.
cameras at home and it's just us. It's something that we're still going to incorporate because it's a pretty neat thing to do.
Yeah, I love it.
So Gina, thanks for popping in tonight. We'd love to have you come in and chat with other guests when we have them. And
Absolutely.
we'll call it a night.
All right. Good night,
We
guys.
thank all of our
All right.
guests for coming in to chat with us. Looks like Debbie and Tina were around for a while, and you guys have a good night as well.
All right. We'll see everyone next week.
The Paranomalies podcast would like to thank Twinkle Twinkle Little Store, located in Cheyenne, Wyoming, for sponsoring our show.